Configuring email services in Plesk. This tutorial will show you how to configure email services in Plesk. For this demonstration, we logged into Plesk as the admin user. If you're logging in as a client or domain administrator, the navigation will differ slightly and some of the options will not be available in your control panel. Whenever possible, we will note the differences in access levels in this tutorial. First, let's look at the global settings for the server. Click the server link. Click the Components Management icon. There are mail server engines that are compatible with Plesk and can be installed on the server. The mail server component that is installed will be listed here. If it has options that can be configured from Plesk, the component will be displayed as a link. Plesk by default comes with Mail Enable Standard for the mail server component. Mail Enable Standard does not support the Internet Message Access Protocol, or IMAP, which is why our server was configured with HMail Server installed instead of Mail Enable Standard when it was provisioned. Click the HMail Server 4.4.B283 link. The only option this particular mail server engine gives us to control from Plesk is the password to access it. Custom configuration of other options can be made through the system via a remote desktop session. For more information about managing components, refer to the tutorial Managing Services and Components in Plesk. Click the Plesk Control Panel Components Management link. Click the Webmail link. There are also several webmail engines that are compatible with Plesk. Horde comes installed by default. Others may need to be installed before they can be used for webmail. Plesk has configured the selected webmail engine to be accessible on the webmail subdomain of each of the domains on the server. Mail users should be able to log into webmail at the following address. Click the server link. Click the mail icon. Here we can configure several options that control the way the mail server handles email. This option can be used to limit the size of the messages that email servers are allowed to send through this server. It will also limit the size of incoming messages that can be delivered to accounts hosted on this server. This option will keep your mail users from setting insecure passwords that are vulnerable to dictionary attacks. This option will enable the service on port 587 as well as port 25. Many Internet service providers block port 25 at their network firewall. This is done as a security measure to prevent viri-like email worms and spam zombies from sending email from infected machines connected to their network. Users attempting to send mail on port 25 will not be able to connect to the server when connected through these ISPs. This is the reason this option is available on Plesk. However, your server should come pre-configured in the mail service setup to also be listening on port 26, so you should not need to enable this option in Plesk. These options control relaying of messages to remotely hosted domains. IP addresses or networks listed here will not be required to authenticate in order to relay messages. By default, only localhost is allowed to relay without authentication. Allowing the server to relay without authentication from other locations is a security risk that can result in your server being exploited by spammers and blacklisted by other mail providers and spam filtering services. These options can be used to enable third-party spam filtering lists that will automatically reject mail from sources on those lists. URLs for multiple lists should be entered semicolon-delimited. Click the Spam Filtering tab. Here we can configure the server-wide settings for spam filtering. HMail Server does not support user-configurable spam filtering settings. In order to enable user-configurable spam filtering, you would need to install a different mail server component, such as Mail Enable Standard, which supports this functionality. The hits required for spam field is the most important part of the configuration. By default, this is set to 7. Lowering this value will make the filtering more aggressive, while raising it will make it less aggressive. Setting it to 10 will cause no email to get flagged, effectively disabling the filtering. This option can help with load issues caused by attempting to filter large messages. This option controls how messages are marked. If you disable the Modify Spam Mail Subject option, messages flagged as spam will still contain an entry that will be added to the header of the message. This can be used instead of the subject flag for selectively deleting or quarantining suspected spam automatically. Here you can enable domain keys spam protection for incoming mail and/or outgoing mail. More information about domain keys spam protection can be found on the following site. Click the Antivirus tab. Here you can enable server-side antivirus scanning if you wish. HMail Server does not support user-configurable spam filtering settings. In order to enable user-configurable spam filtering, you would need to install a different mail server component, such as Mail Enable Standard, which supports this functionality. Let's add some criteria to our blacklist. Both spam filtering and antivirus scanning add to the overhead necessary for processing email. Be advised that the more of these options that you enable, the more resources you will need to process mail. These options can adversely affect the performance of the server, especially if there's a large amount of mail traffic to the server. Click the Blacklist tab. Blacklisting is used to define a custom list of sender criteria to be used by the mail server to automatically delete or flag matching incoming messages. Let's add some criteria to our blacklist. Click the Add New Entry icon. Plesk allows us to add email addresses to the blacklist. Wildcards can be used to match multiple addresses on the same domain, and multiple entries can be added at once by using a comma-delimited list. Plesk does not give us the option to blacklist server names or IP addresses. This is due to the fact that blocking the traffic using the firewall is a much more efficient and effective means of handling this task. For more information about configuring the firewall, refer to the tutorial, Configuring the Firewall in Plesk. Enter the Specify addresses. Click the appropriate radio button to change the action to be performed by the server when the sender's address matches the criteria if necessary. Click the OK button. Now let's remove the criteria from our blacklist. Click the check boxes to select the entries. Click the Remove Selected link. Click the Confirm Removal checkbox. Click the OK button. Click the Whitelist tab. Whitelisting is used to define a custom list of sender criteria which will cause other filtering to be bypassed, ensuring that these messages get delivered to the intended recipients. Let's add some criteria to our whitelist. Click the Add New Entry icon. Plesk allows us to add email addresses to the whitelist. Wildcards can be used to match multiple addresses on the same domain, and multiple entries can be added at once by using a comma-delimited list. We can also add the IP addresses of networks we want whitelisted to the criteria. When adding IP addresses to the whitelist, Plesk requires that you include the subnet mask of the IP block you want added. To add a single IP to the whitelist, enter /32 for the subnet mask of the block. You can also use full notation instead of the CIDR notation for the mask. Enter the Specify addresses. Click the OK button. Now let's remove the entries. Click the checkboxes to select the entries. Click the Remove Selected link. Click the Confirm Removal checkbox. Click the OK button. Click the Statistics tab. Here you can generate reports on how effective the antivirus and spam filtering have been, so that you can make adjustments to the settings if necessary. Next, let's look at the domain level settings. Click the Domains link. Click the domain name. Under a Clients panel, the domains owned by that client will be listed at the bottom of the main menu, accessed by clicking the Home link in the navigation panel on the left. Click the Mail icon. Under a Domain Administrators panel, the Mail icon is located in the main menu, accessed by clicking the Home link in the navigation panel on the left. From here, we can disable the service for this domain. From here, you can also manage the accounts on this domain. However, this will not be covered in this tutorial. For information on managing the email accounts on a domain, refer to the tutorial Managing Email Accounts in Plesk. Click the Preferences icon. Here is where we can select how mail to non-existent users is handled. Our server policy is currently to discard the messages. HMail Server does not support manually overriding the option, except to enable a Catch-to address. also referred to as a catch-all alias, or to redirect it to another mail server's IP address. Enabling a catch-to address on a domain is not recommended and can result in poor performance by the server. It is advised to use individual aliases if you need multiple addresses to forward to a single mailbox on a domain, instead of enabling the mailbox as the catch-to address. Congratulations! You now know how to configure email services in Plesk.